that the Pacers defense was actually really good for most of the game, right? It was good in the first quarter, but the frenetic pace and the shots that they were making in the first quarter, both of these teams, it was like crazy. It was almost unsustainable. The Thunder scored 23 in quarters 2 and 3, and the Pacers scored 25 and 27 in quarters 2 and 3. That, I think, was more realistic. It was a regression. The first quarter, they just seemed like both teams were just on fire. In fact, to speak, I think, more specifically to the first quarter, OKC had some disorganization, in my opinion. They seemed a little bit out of sync defensively, having to help on the ball, and then kind of like late rotations or incomplete rotations. In the first quarter, I noticed some of that. I did kind of see some kind of like pseudo-zone stuff going on in the paint for the Thunder, and Indy actually made them pay for that. They ended up getting some three-point looks that were pretty open, and they capitalized. And that's why I think you saw the points that you saw in the first quarter, why the point total was actually pretty high. So early lead for Indy. And then OKC's offense seemed a little bit out of sync. I did see a lot of J-Dub initiating and running the offense early. I think some of that was preservation of SGA, trying to conserve his energy for later in the game when they know they have to have him. And he spoke to kind of being tired in the previous interviews and stuff like that. So I do think some of that was in play. Chet kind of turned his ankle a little bit early in the game. You kind of saw his left foot kind of flimsy flop over. And I think that led to a second time it happened, maybe third time. He definitely didn't look very stable on that ankle. But for his credit, dude's tough as nails. He hung in there and he played. And he was able to be a difference maker. He wasn't dropping 30 or anything like that, but he had a couple of buckets. His presence defensively, like he had some blocks that were phenomenal. He was very good. I think for his standards, he's giving you 15, 20 points and then having that impact defensively, the rebounds and those things, I think he's giving you what you need. Aaron Nesmith was very aggressive defensively in the first quarter. He picked up some early fouls. They had to get him out of there, and they made some substitutions. I think Shepard was the sub that came in for him. The score was 20-12, 7 minutes left in the quarter when OKC called their first timeout. Daigneault had seen enough. He needed to make an adjustment, gather up the troops, figure out what was going on there, and make those adjustments. Indy started the game 9 of 12 from the field. Indy started the game with 8 assists on those 9 field goals. The Pacers' offense was humming to start the game. And the Thunder defense was on its heels. As good as they are, they definitely looked like they were reacting as opposed to being a proactive defensive team that's taking things away from the Pacers. The Pacers were getting what they wanted. I think the Pacers had their first turnover 7 minutes into the quarter, right? 1 turnover. So they were playing very clean, very good basketball, which was pretty impressive considering how good OKC's defense is. Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, and those guys. J-Dub was very assertive offensively in the first quarter. He scored on several possessions, creating offense for the team. Once we saw them kind of settle in, and after that timeout, OKC started to play, I think, a little bit more in sync defensively. The rotations were a little bit tighter. There were several turnovers for OKC early. J-Dub, I saw a couple of turnovers that were pretty bad, pretty egregious, definitely unforced. He did have 4 turnovers on the game. A couple of them were forced and a couple of them not forced. Probably got to clean that up a little bit, especially if he's going to have all that ball handling duty to kind of give SGA a spell. Lou Dort's defense was very good. He was chasing Halliburton from the get, right from the beginning. He also hit some threes. I think he was 4 of 5 from 3, something along those lines. No, that was the last game. I think he was 2 of 2 from 3, maybe. I'm trying to think. He had a couple. He didn't take a lot of shots, but his defensive presence was felt. He was giving Halliburton the business. Caruso had some huge moments in the first quarter. Rips, buckets, turning into fast break points. Lots of points in the first quarter between these two teams. I think the score is 35-34 at the end of the first. The pace was frenetic. All right. By the time we get to Q2, right, the second quarter, I'm convinced that SGA is preserving himself. He knows that this game is going to go down to the wire, and he is saving himself as much as he possibly can. I know Daigneault was probably looking at those minutes. I know the team was looking at, how often he was going to be handling the ball and creating offense. OKC's defense was still having some trouble in the second quarter. It always seemed like they were a half step late on the rotations. TJ McConnell came in the game into the second quarter, did have an impact. He didn't have the huge scoring output, but he had some points, and you know what he does for that team. Even defensively, he plays really hard. Chet seemed like he was struggling with the handle. Physically, he's very tall, so the ball's very high. That ball seemed like it came out quite a bit. Siakam blocked SGA in the second quarter, something fierce. Chet destroyed Neesmith on a layup attempt. That was a pretty sweet block. There were some hard fouls on breakaways in the second quarter. Things got a little chippy. I think Alex Caruso was on the receiving end of an Obi Toppin body check right before he left the ground. It triggered a review for a flagrant. I think they ended up assessing a flagrant to Toppin. That was 2 points, and the ball for OKC. That was pretty big. To me, it's just old school basketball, guys. I don't really think it was dirty. To me, it's old school basketball, but the way that they officiate these games now in the modern NBA, those things qualify as flagrants. So I'm not surprised that they called it a flagrant, although I'm disappointed. I don't think it deserved it. I think it was just a hard securing the foul type of contact, where you have to make sure he doesn't score. I know Micah understands. Micah's been watching hoops a long time. It didn't look egregious. He still looked like he made an attempt at the ball. Like he fulfilled the check boxes of trying to make it look like he was going for the ball. But that's how the NBA is now, and that's how they call it. A lot of fouls were called in the second quarter. Indy's defense was a little too physical for the refs' liking, and they did call fouls on the Pacers. And it had an impact because it put the Thunder into the bonus early. And the Thunder shot really well from the free throw line. 34 of 38 for a 90% clip. That was a difference maker in the game. Indy's offense was actually negatively impacted by a lot of those defensive fouls. And the defensive lapses that they had in the second quarter, it actually impacts their offense because their defense turns into offense. Right? It's the transition, it's the fast breaks, that type of deal. Indy ended up going on a pretty nice run in the middle of the second quarter. The passing through the OKC defense seemed to work pretty well. Again, the Thunder have hellacious defenders in Lou Dort and Alex Caruso, but if you can pass through the defense, you can get some opportunities. The rim rolls and some of that was there in the second quarter. J-Dub's bad ball handles continued through the second quarter. We saw him with some turnovers. Indy finished really strong. They took the lead and secured the lead 60-57. I think OKC actually took the lead in a part of the second, and then Indy took it back. So the Thunder were shooting poorly. I think they were 1 of 11 from 3 at halftime or something like that. So the Pacers were doing their part defensively.